Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Hafide Tiro, and welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we are talking about NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo. Say it 3 times real fast. And here to tell us more about what that is Jane Mack with the Marianas Writers Movement. Jane, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
What is NaNoWriMo?
NaNoWriMo those are the first syllables of National Novel Writing Month, which is November. November is National Novel Writing Month, and it's a chance for everyone in the world to write their novels during November.
Now, this may seem like a basic question, but what qualifies as a novel versus, say, other types of writing?
A novel is a long, long, long story.
Okay.
So it's not a short story, and in order to... The challenge is 50,000 words, which is kind of a shortish novel, but there are novels out there that are 50,000 words. So that's the challenge you meet when you accept the challenge to join NaNoWriMo and write in November.
Okay, that sounds really intimidating to write that many words in a month, but there are people who actually do it. So what is Marianas Writers Movement doing to organize this, and how is it going to work?
Okay, it's a national, it's actually an international challenge that we are participating in the NaNoWriMo challenge, which comes out of California. And what we're doing is supporting any writers here who want to join. So we'll have write-ins. I put together an emergency writer's kit, or writer's emergency kit, I think is what I've called it, to help you get through the month. And we have our website that has some helpful tips and different kinds of inspirations and fun stuff and cartoons to keep you going. It also helps to have snacks.
Oh, yes. If there's snacks, I'm in.
Okay.
No, that wasn't a request. But so what is the commitment? Like, what does it take to write a novel in the month and in a month? And what if a person feels like, man, I don't know if I can do it?
It's okay to feel like you can't do it. And I can almost guarantee that when you're halfway through the month, you'll really feel like you can't do it. Different people write in different ways, and there is no one way fits all. If you are somebody who likes to write consistently, you're going to write 1,667 words a day, every day, and you will have your novel by the end of the month. If you're someone like me who is more of a binge writer, you're going to use those holidays that we have so generously.
At least 3 in November.
3 in November. Yeah. And you're going to use them to write on those days and the weekends and crank out 4,000, 5,000 words on those days, and then let the other days slide a little bit until you get your story on paper.
Who should write?
Everybody should write. Everybody. Everybody has a story to tell. And it can be a true story, but NaNoWriMo really focuses on fiction novels, a long fictional story, in part because sometimes you can get to more truth in fiction than you can in fact. In fact, you're kind of stuck with reality and also the things that you don't know. You can't put thoughts into other people's heads when you're dealing with fact, unless they have expressed those thoughts out loud. But in fiction, you can. In fiction, you can let the thoughts of your characters or their motivations or their inspirations or their evil intentions come out on the page.
So you are a novelist,
Yes,
but you've never been published.
correct.
How does that work?
You don't have to be published to be a novelist. You just have to have written a very long fictional story. And I've written, I think, 13, something like that, 14, a lot. And if you want to be published, you can certainly find ways to get published. You can do a self-publishing, or you can get an agent. I haven't published because when I write novels, everybody writes a first draft. First drafts are notoriously riddled with problems. They will have some really brilliant points during them where you think, I can't believe I wrote that, it's so good. But there will be lots of other problems where you are repeating the same word over and over, or you're misspelling things, or your character who didn't want to do this in the beginning is suddenly saying this is exactly what her goal is. You're like, wait, when did that happen? So first drafts are not something you want to publish. You need to edit before you publish.
That's really encouraging, because I think, some people who shall go unnamed might have a problem sometimes with, wanting it to be perfect. And it's really nice to know that actually you don't have to share your novel if you don't want to.
Exactly. And one of the inspirations, NaNoWriMo was formed by a guy named Chris Beatty, who in the 90s said, this is an era that was kind to ridiculous thoughts. And he thought it would be fun to write a novel in 30 days. He always wanted to be a novelist, and there was nothing like a deadline to help you get it done. And he got a group of people to do it, and some of them succeeded and a lot of them didn't. But it was, for those who did, it became an ongoing thing. And now there are hundreds of thousands of people around the world who write novels every November.
Mm-hmm. Pretty inspiring, actually.
It is. It's very inspiring. And some of them are young, and some of them are old. I'm in my 70s, and I'm still writing these novels. And there are people who are much older than me on NaNoWriMo. But most of the writers, I think, are in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And a lot are struggling with time issues, like, they're working full time, but there's still room to get the novel done,
What's your favorite genre of novel?
I like reading cozy mysteries. I like reading any kind of murder mystery. I like reading historical fiction. I love historical fiction. I love history. I love nonfiction, biography, and other nonfiction, political writing. I have in the past had spells where I was totally reading science fiction. Oh my God, there was so much good science fiction in the 70s and 80s. It was just like, and there's current fiction or contemporary fiction or literary fiction. I like everything. I like young adult stories.
I guess I should have asked, is there anything you don't like?
I'm not a big fan of romance, except for Jane Austen.
Okay. So a little bit later on in the show, we're going to hear one of your first drafts. But can you tell us what it is that you have on the calendar for NaNoWriMo this year?
Sure. We're going to. I am writing. So far, we don't have any sign up where you have to identify yourself as somebody who's going to write this November. If you sign up at NaNoWriMo, which is the national site, and you show that at Joten Kidzu Public Library, you can get one of the writer's emergency kits if you're one of the first 10 to sign up. And then I hope you'll come to the write-ins. We will have write-ins. The first one is going to be a kickoff on November 1st.
So this is a time where everybody who's interested can write together, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're writing writing is an individual project, and so you're in your head a lot, and you're writing alone a lot, and you're doing your research pretty much alone, although there are people who will help you with research. But what makes NaNoWriMo especially helpful is that there's all these other people doing it alongside of you. It's like parallel play for toddlers. It is, but it really helps, And then if you get stuck, there's somebody there who's also wanting to take a break and willing to help you out. Mm-hmm. And that can be on the NaNoWriMo site, but that can also be at our write-in. So the first one is Java Joe's, Wednesday, November 1st, 7 to 9 p.m.
Okay.
And then we'll have them on the holidays, and we'll have them on the Saturdays and Sundays. So there's going to be a lot of write-ins, unless I get sick, like I did last year. But hopefully everything will be great, and we'll have write-ins, and they will circulate among different venues in the CNMI. I'm still working that out. Java Joe's, Marianas Creations, Shirley's and CK, Zoom. You also suggested Cha, which sounds great, and maybe 670, and we're still pinning that down. But the calendar, I will put up the write-in information on the Marianas Writers Movement website.
And it sounds like if anybody's interested, this would be a good opportunity to come and just get a little energy. I mean, I work a lot, and I definitely write alone all the time. And sometimes you actually can get some energy from working with other people and knowing that you're all on the same mission. And
yes,
it's a good opportunity.
It's a great opportunity. And it also, I'm just going to put this out there, you can show yourself off as a writer. And so you don't have to be somebody who is a great writer. You don't have to be a published writer. You just have to be somebody who says, I'm a writer. And that's what it takes. Just admit that you are a writer. And if you aren't a writer yet, that you're becoming a writer. No problem.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about novel writing, and Jane is going to share one of her novels, or part of one of her novels, with us. We'll do that after this break.
I Northern Marianas Humanities Council, bulagwinahanya puri historian Marianas dan kultura. Sinyon soda esisihanan formasyon gi zon mami website nmhcouncil.org, pat bisita gi YouTube, pat Facebook. Guajalokwe diferentes clases leblo na sinya un fan. I Northern Marianas Humanities Council has uzura todo I experiencia tautau.
Welcome back to your Humanities Half Hour. We are talking about NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, with Jane Mack of Marianas Writers Movement. Jane, you guys have a website where you have some resources available.
Yes, marianaswritersmovement.org. And some of the things we have on there include author birthdays. You can find that at the Joten Kidzu Public Library Facebook page too, but they're not always the same. We pick different authors. We also have words with word histories, that because writing is all about words. We have writing prompts that I put out every week. If you want to develop a habit of writing, you can go there and check out the writing prompt and see what you come up with. We post about contests and opportunities like NaNoWriMo. We post blog posts on tips and ways to handle different issues when you're writing. I have some on student essays to help students who are writing student essays. I have some tips on writing historical fiction. I have some crossover training blog posts, crocheting and writing, and how your creative talents can, in one field, can translate and transfer valuable skills into your writing creativity.
You're a pretty busy lady, and I don't think you're getting paid to do all this. Why do you do it?
I do it because I love to write, and I want other people to write, and I really feel that it's absolutely critically important that we get more voices from the Marianas writing, because what we have in our history is just the colonial voices. We don't have the indigenous voices. And what we get now are the voices that are the loudest, biggest, most powerful political voices. And I want to hear from the people who don't have power, because you gain power by writing. You have that pen. You can be nobody. You can have no money. If you can write, you are preserving some aspect of culture and life that needs to be known.
Beautiful. So let's talk about your draft novel. What is your writing process, and can you read for us a bit?
Sure. My writing process isn't really something that is written in stone. I just start. I start wherever I can. I usually have a character in mind, or a story in mind, or a setup in mind. In 2009, I wrote a novel. I didn't have anything in mind. And so what I started with was just creating characters. And you can get a lot of information from Chris Beatty's book, No Plot, ? No problem, ! They have that at the Joe Tenkidzu Public Library if you want to borrow it. And one of the things he does suggest is in the early weeks of NaNoWriMo, the first week, the first days, the first hours, just blow your whistle and call everybody down onto the field. No matter who they are, they'll find a place in your novel. And so that's what I did in 2009. I just started creating characters.
All right. We'd like to meet them.
Okay, so I called it Nanosity, Nano being NaNoWriMo, and City being I needed a place. So I just made this word up. Okay.
I love it.
And I started with some quotes, because when you start with quotes, those are words that count in your word count, but you didn't have to think of them.
I love the way you think.
Yeah, find an aim in life before you run out of ammunition. That was from Arnold Glasgow, I think it is. And then you have to do your own growing, no matter how tall your grandfather was. That's Abraham Lincoln. Jules Regis stared at the hot water in the utility area of the Joe Tenkidzu Library. She was glad to have a job. They were hard to come by at present when so many people were out of work. And as a senior in high school, she knew that her responsibilities for schoolwork would suffer, but she needed the money. She was saving for college. It will be ironic if I save enough money and then don't get into college because I let my grade point average fall, she thought. She thought working at the library would give her a chance to stay on top of things, just being around that many books, talking with people who were reading, and breathing in the air of literature. She thought she'd pick up something by osmosis, at the very least. Instead, she stood here in front of the water heater, having been instructed to get it lit since a new tank of gas had been hooked up. So I don't even know if Joe Tenkidzu Library has a water heater. I doubt that they would instruct a teenager to light the water heater, but it goes on with her tackling that job and being very creative, pulling things out of her purse, including a sparkler that almost burns the place down. Well, but she does get it lit. And so at the end, you have the librarian, Mrs. Toves, in the picture, saying, "What? No, stop!" The voice of Mrs. Toves crashed over Jules. She ignored it. She pushed and turned the gas valve knob, heard the hiss of gas mingle with the stutter of her sparkler, and whoosh. She withdrew the sparkler quickly, dropped it, and jumped up. She stamped on the dying embers and turned to Mrs. Toves. "Voila," she said. "I've lit the water heater." Mrs. Toves stood with her mouth open and both hands over her heart. "Thank you," she said weakly. Jules smiled broadly. "You're welcome, Mrs. Toves," she said. "Anything else you want me to do?" And so then I go to introduce her father, who says she's lucky she didn't get fired, and he gives her a lecture on all the things that could have gone wrong. And yes, they do have medical insurance. And,
you had an interesting description of her father that really brought him alive, I felt.
I'm looking for that. Oh, yeah, here it is. When she's finishing up with him, she says, "I'm leaving now, Dad." And he says, "So I guess I'm making dinner, huh?" Because the mom is out of the picture, said Mr. Regis. "Soba is okay with me." She felt a prickle of resentment. She missed her mom, who had moved to Honolulu with her new husband, and she was tired of her dad cycling through girlfriends, none of whom he could get along with for more than a few months. And she sure as hell was not going to take over the duties of cooking and cleaning for her dad and her 3 younger brothers. She did the laundry. She did the grocery shopping. She packed their lunches sometimes. Making dinners and cleaning the house and washing the car, all that was just too much, especially since she was working now. Didn't her dad get it? Then I moved to him. Mr. Regis did not get it. He was bored with the obligations of his life. He loved his 4 children, but had little in common with any of them. Jules wanted to go to college. He imagined her becoming a lawyer, like the people he listened to every day, strutting around spewing big words and acting as if their fixation with easements and zoning ordinances was somehow earth-shatteringly important. He works in a law office.
What does it feel like to write?
Oh, it's so much fun. You create these characters who become real. And so when I was I did write, besides writing, I write 3 kinds of novels. I write murder mysteries. I write literary justice murder mysteries, where I take real cases that happened here and write all around them. And then I do historical fiction. And when I wrote the first time I wrote historical fiction, I didn't know how critically important it was to organize your real characters from your fictional characters. And by the end, the fictional characters had become so real to me that I couldn't remember who was real and who was fictional. It's just amazing what the creative process can do to you, and what you can do with the creative process. It's really fun.
That's an interesting perspective. We're going to take a break here. Not really a break, but we're going to hear from a young writer that has participated in the Marianas writing movement.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Manahan. I'm a student at NMC and a work-study tutor for Project PROA. This is a piece I wrote for the Marianas Writers Association for fun. I like reading stories that really make you feel emotional in a certain way, and I believe horror stories are some of the best ways to do it. This was my first attempt, and I wanted to write about something that everyone could probably relate to, being surrounded by the ocean and all. I haven't had time to finish the story, but hopefully when I do, I'll be able to share it with those interested. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you to Miss Jane and Jean from the Marianas Writers Association for giving me confidence in writing and speaking to everyone today. This story is called Drowned Out. Through cold swells of darkness, I erupt through the surface of the water, pulled up by the efforts of Diane, my fiancée. Gasping for air whilst the salt of the ocean burned my eyes, I had realized what happened. A hard wind had blown me off the railing of the ship, and without thinking, she dove in after me. Without any notice from the crew, we were left behind in an unforgiving sea. The dead of night loomed above us. The crashing of waves against each other drowned out any cry for help we attempted. The only witnesses to our demise were the stars that gleamed down from the night sky, as if they were the lights of eyes that had come to see the extinguishment of ours. Diane was always the one with a better outlook than I, draping my arms across her neck as we worked together to swim, with the idea that we'd eventually find some sort of way out of our predicament. But as I held onto her, so did the shivering cold of the water, seeping its way into my body, stealing what warmth and stamina I had left. She knew as well as I that the morning wouldn't come for several hours, and by that time the ship would have traveled a great distance before anyone noticed our disappearance. The situation was so dreary, so abysmal, I had almost completely gone despondent, losing all hope. That was until we started hearing the voices. It was dull at first, but somehow, through the constant roar of waves, I heard it. A faint, distant voice calling out. It wasn't clear what I had heard, but I urged Diane to follow the directions I pointed at, towards the sound. I continued to hold on to her, using my legs to propel us forward while Diane used her arms to continue the forward movement. The closer we ventured, the clearer the sound became until I had realized it had been more than just one voice, but what seemed like an entire group of people calling out, "We see you! Come towards us! We'll help you!" was what I started hearing as the voices were more intelligible. That was when we had finally spotted the island, what we assumed at the time was the source of the sounds. We spurred on, rushing onwards with what energy reserves we had left. The ocean tugged at us, slowed us down, yet we were instilled with new hope. I began to feel the sand at my feet. I practically ran through the water, barreling towards the shore with the Diane in tow. I finally reached the end of the ocean's grass, released from its grip, falling forward from exhaustion into the damp sand, Diane wobbling out and lying right next to me. In our rushed excitement, we hadn't realized that the voices had ceased. The only thing we heard was that of the howling wind, rustling against the dark trees that stood upon the edge of the beach. I picked myself up and looked around. It had seemed that we were the only signs of life that had been on this island. But were we truly alone? This is the end of what I have written so far. As short as it was, I hope you were able to enjoy it. Thank you, everyone.
That was Bill Manahan sharing some of his writing as we are talking about National Novel Writing Month. Jane, any final thoughts before we go?
I want everybody to know that you can write, you have stories to write, and everybody else in November is going to be doing all the things they do in November. And if you join and write in November at the end, you will have something that you remember forever, that you are a novelist, while everybody else was just doing their ordinary stuff. You can do it.
So the first write-in, if you would like to write with others, is going to be November 1st from 7 to 9 at Java Joe's. So come on down, and if you'd like to find out more about the other dates, you can check out their website. What is the local website?
MarianasWritersMovement.org.
Jane, Mack, thank you so much.
Thank you, too.
This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.